The fog rolls in thick over Elmwood Creek, swallowing the once familiar path. Sarah strides home, her boots crunching on brittle leaves, the only disturbance in the eerie silence that has consumed the night. The path ahead is obscured by the dense fog, leaving nothing but the looming silhouette of the forsaken Blackwood house against the sullen sky. It's a chilling sight, a remnant of a decade-old incident that still haunts the town's whispered gossip. An abrupt snap from behind shatters the quiet, jolting Sarah. She whirls around, her heart pounding a frenzied rhythm against her ribs. The path is empty, a void shrouded in white mist. A wave of relief washes over her, so palpable it feels like treachery. But then, a voice, raspy and guttural, seeps from the wooded darkness, chilling her to the bone. "Lost, little lamb?" It sneers. The voice is not human. It slithers through the fog, a grotesque parody of a man's speech, laced with an ancient, malevolent undercurrent. Sarah pivots, her breath hitching. There on the edge ends Renavere Blackwood. His face, once youthful and rebellious, is now a pallid mask, his eyes ablaze with an unnatural yellow light. The boy Sarah remembers from school is gone. In his place is a terrifying caricature, a puppet manipulated by something far more sinister. She steps back, her voice a shaky whisper. "Renavere." A cruel smile stretches across his face, revealing teeth sharpened like a predator's. "Renavere sleeps," the voice hisses. "We are awake." His head tilts, those inhuman eyes never leaving hers. "And we are hungry." A surge of panic grips Sarah. The hushed tales of the Blackwood house, demonic possession, and a boy sacrificed to a dark ritual flood her mind. The fog around her seems to thicken, suffocating her as Renavere begins his silent, predatory advance. There, on the edge of the path, stood Renavere Blackwood, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurks beneath the mundane, a puppet to an ancient evil, and a predator on the hunt for his next prey. A grotesque smile stretched across his face, revealing sharpened teeth. Renavere's voice, once familiar, was now a chilling rasp. It was as if the boy Sarah once knew had been hollowed out, replaced by an entity both ancient and malevolent. "Renavere sleeps," it hissed through his lips, the words seeming to curl like smoke in the foggy air. "We are awake." Sarah's heart pounded like a frantic drumbeat in her chest. Her mind raced back to the whispered tales of the Blackwood house, of the boy who'd been claimed by darkness. They were just stories, she'd thought, ghost tales spun by bored locals to scare the children. But now, staring into the yellowed eyes of her former classmate, Sarah felt the icy fingers of fear clutch at her heart. "And we are hungry," Renavere continued, his voice a gravelly echo in the silence. The words hung in the air, a chilling promise that made Sarah's blood run cold. She could do nothing but watch as Renavere's gaze bore into her, his eyes glowing like twin embers in the shadows. She took a step back, her foot crunching on the gravel beneath. The sound seemed to reverberate in the stillness, a harsh reminder of her isolation. She could run, but where would she go? The fog was thick and disorienting, the path home obscured. Renavere started to move towards her, his steps measured and deliberate. There was a predatory grace to his movements, a silent threat that made her skin crawl. Each footstep echoed in the silence, a chilling soundtrack to her mounting fear. Sarah's breath hitched as she felt the fog close in around her. It seemed to thicken, becoming a tangible entity that wrapped its cold arms around her. She could barely see Renavere now, his figure blurred in the white wall of fog, but she could hear him, his voice a sinister whisper that seemed to come from all directions. The fog seemed to thicken, suffocating, as Renavere began to walk towards her, each step silent, predatory. The voice in the fog was no longer human. It was the voice of the thing that had taken Renavere, the voice of the darkness that now stalked her through the fog. She stumbled back, her foot catching on a gnarled root. Sarah's world tilted as she fell, hands scraping on the gravelly path. The taste of fear was metallic on her tongue, her heart pounding a staccato rhythm in her chest. She scrambled to right herself, but her legs were tangled in her coat, her mind a whirlwind of terror. And then, like the tolling of a death knell, that laughter rang out again. The sound was hollow, devoid of any true mirth, a chilling reminder of the monstrous entity that wore Renavere's face. It echoed through the foggy night, a haunting requiem that promised nothing but darkness. It was the headlights that saved her. They cut through the fog like a beacon, illuminating the pathway and the twisted figure that loomed over her. The sudden brightness seemed to startle Renavere, or whatever it was that inhabited him. He recoiled, shielding his eyes from the harsh light. It was her chance. Sarah kicked free from her coat, the cold air biting into her skin. She pushed herself to her feet, her muscles screaming in protest. But she didn't dare stop, didn't dare look back. The car engine roared as she stumbled towards it, her breath coming out in ragged gasps. The car skidded to a halt just as Sarah reached it. She didn't recognize the driver, but that didn't matter. She clambered into the passenger seat, slamming the door shut behind her. The driver, a middle-aged woman with wide, frightened eyes, didn't question her. She simply put the car in gear and sped off, leaving the foggy pathway and the grotesque figure behind. But even as they left Elmwood Creek behind, even as the fog thinned and the normalcy of the town returned, Sarah couldn't shake off the terror. The laughter still echoed in her ears, a chilling reminder of the horror she'd escaped. It was a sound she knew would haunt her dreams, a promise of a darkness that clung to her long after she reached the safety of her car. The next day, the fog had lifted, leaving Elmwood Creek bathed in an unsettling clarity. The sun, bright and unyielding, cast long shadows that danced along the quiet streets. Sarah, her hands still shaking, walked into the sheriff's office, her story spilling out in uneven gasps. Sheriff Johansson, a burly man with skeptical eyes and a gruff demeanor, listened in silence. He had heard these tales before, whispers of the Blackwood house, of Renavere, of the devil himself. He dismissed them as nothing more than town folklore, the stuff of campfire stories and late-night frights. Yet Sarah's trembling hands, her wide, haunted eyes gave him pause. "Sarah," he began, his voice low and soothing, "you've got a vivid imagination. Too many horror movies, maybe?" He chuckled, patting her hand in an attempt at comfort. "Renavere Blackwood's been gone for years. The house has been empty. It's just an old building, nothing more." But Sarah knew better. She knew the truth that lurked in the darkness, a truth that the daylight couldn't erase. "I know what I saw, Sheriff," she insisted, her voice a whisper against the harsh reality. "I heard him... speak." The sheriff merely shook his head, a tired sigh escaping his lips. "Go home, Sarah. Get some rest. Things will look better in the morning." But the morning held no comfort for Sarah. The once familiar streets seemed to twist and turn in unfamiliar ways. The shadows seemed darker, the silence more profound. The echo of Renavere's voice, that chilling laughter, followed her, a spectral reminder of the horror she had encountered. And somewhere, in the ruins of the Blackwood house, something stirred. The empty rooms echoed with a sinister whisper, a rustle of unseen movement. The devil, it seemed, was not done with Elmwood Creek. And somewhere, in the ruins of the Blackwood house, something or somethings hungered for more. Sarah couldn't shake off the memory of that night. The voice, the eyes, the laughter, it all haunted her. The chill of the encounter lingered, a ghostly presence that seemed to seep into her very bones. Every shadow seemed to whisper his name. Renavere. The name was a curse, a nightmare wrapped in a riddle, and it was all too real. She tried to tell others, to warn them of the lurking horror, but her words fell on deaf ears, dismissed as the ramblings of an overstimulated imagination. The town remained indifferent, their skepticism a cold slap to her pleas for understanding. "There's no such thing as ghosts, Sarah," they'd say, their eyes rolling skyward. But she knew better. This was no specter of the imagination, no figment born from the recesses of fear. This was real as the terror that gripped her heart every time she closed her eyes. Sarah found herself isolated, trapped in her own private horror show. The once familiar streets of Elmwood Creek now felt alien, the people distant and unreachable. She was alone with her fear, her only companion the echo of that chilling voice, yet she refused to be defeated. She had faced the darkness once, and she would do it again if she had to. She would not let fear consume her. She would not let Ranavere, or whatever inhabited him, win. She had to believe she was stronger than the nightmare that had chosen to make her its prey. That belief was her only weapon, her only shield against the encroaching darkness. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, sinister shadows across Elmwood Creek, doubt began to creep in. Was she strong enough? Could she really face this terror alone? As darkness fell, she could swear she heard the distant echo of that chilling laughter once again, leaving her and the audience in suspense about what horrors the future might hold.